Waiting for Unity 5.6 to finish importing my project. I'm not at all sure that this is going to work out, but it's been 15 minutes and I didn't feel like holding up the stream any longer, so I figured I would stream a picture of the taskbar. Exciting stuff, I know. There we are. Now we're live. Exciting! Oh. I know that streaming a taskbar or progress bar is nearly exciting as my ordinary streams, but it's been stuck on the Aeroskip Corvettes for the past 5 minutes, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I hope that it's not crashed, because that would be really obnoxious. Anyway, 5.6 has a number of new features that I do need to use, including a lot for pathfinding and stuff. But upgrading is always a huge pain in the ass, so I put it off. But yesterday I had a physics problem, and I upgraded to 5.6 on another project, so I figured I might as well. Ah! Hooray! Well, let's go ahead and see whether or not it works. We got some older scripts here. I have to upgrade to the new post-processing stack rather than these scripts, but we'll wait a while, I think, before we do that. Let me go ahead and post to Twitter that I am live. Streaming, game dev, gonna do some game dev. Paste. Alright, so let's see. I got audio. Yeah, audio. I got everything working. We're ready to rock. I haven't touched this project in a week, and I figured I should probably get back on it before I completely forget what it's like to work on it. I've been doing a voxel prototype to test some physics stuff out, and I'll probably go back to doing that as soon as I'm done with this stream. I didn't make very much progress because I spent 12 hours being an idiot, but that's what happens. So the first thing I wanted to work on today was the nested pop-ups bug, which was in 5.5 and is probably fixed in 5.6, but I realized that I don't actually want to fix it. I want to completely change the way that the pop-up works in the first place. One of the things I want to do is introduce a camera swish to make that work, and this is the pop-up I need to fix, except for I don't want to fix it. I would like it to be in a completely different form. When I made this, I was thinking of how it would be able to show the characters' faces when they were talking. But it feels too dispassionate, and it's not connected with the world, and moreover, when you click on a character, you zoom in on them, so it makes a lot more sense to have a pop-up text box that just floats above their head, which is something that we had, and I took it out. So I'll just put it back in. But I also have to, I have to publish this on YouTube. I did, okay. I also have to implement some other stuff. So let's get started with the easiest one around, and that is going to be the camera swoosh that will hide the panning, the camera panning. To do that, we're going to want to create a physics, sorry, not a physics, a 3D object, which just passes in front of the camera. There are lots of ways to do this without the physics object, without the 3D object, but I think that this is probably the easiest way for us. But we're going to need to have a very specific material for it. We're going to need a material that has some transparency at the front and transparency at the back. Fortunately, we have such a thing. This, nope. This. One of these hologram markers is correct. I just have to. You know, these holograms might not be correct. I might have to create a new one. I know that I have the right material, the texture. Just don't know if I've got the right material. I don't think I do after all. All right, so we'll go ahead and create material. Camera cut material. 3D. 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 camera cut material will use an albedo that is our hologram albedo. H is for hologram. I might not have it. It may have either been in another another place, or it might be not marked as a material properly. It's technically a GUI icon, I think, or a celestial icon. It's one of these icons, but I guess we can't use those with meshes. And we don't have any... Oh, it's not marked as transparent. That's probably the problem. So this is a grid, which is not what I want. Although, for the moment, what I could do is set it up like this. And if we were to change the actual offset, like that, like that. That's probably close enough, I think. Is it fade or transparent? Well, I don't think it matters very much. So we're going to go ahead and make this... Hey, pink hair. We're going to go ahead and make this into something that passes in front of the camera. It'll do for now. Later on, I can change the material into something that actually has a simple pattern to it. I should probably just create that simple pattern, but my art program isn't quite ready to use at the moment, so we'll have to just live with this. I'm moving soon, so things are a little bit obnoxious right now. So what we want this plane to do is move to the right and self-destruct. So if we take a look at our scripts, we have these small functional scripts, which are here. We've got the mouse over much instrument. So we do not actually have a script that can do this, so we'll just go ahead and put one in. We could also do it with an animation or an animator, but since we need a script either way, we might as well. Pinker says, what sort of pattern? Maybe I can knock something out. I just need a... I'm creating something that passes in front of the camera when the camera is switching, when the camera cuts. So it's going to be a real fast, like, swoosh. And so I just need a beam that's solid in the middle and fades out to both sides. But I don't have one. We're going to call this the... actually, I'd probably do it with material offsets too. Yeah, we'll go ahead and call this the... cut helper. 5x12 is probably overkill. I'd probably make it smaller than that, like 256 or even 128. This is something that's going to be... It's only going to be like 6 frames on the screen, so it's going to pass real fast. It doesn't need to be very spectacular. Later on, I'll probably use the same pattern for other objects to get reuse, but I don't have anything I want to do at the moment. So I've got to think about all that stuff over time. My brain is still stuck in voxels mode, so I am not on top of the game. So we'll do a public float duration equals 1, and then we'll do public mesh filter target mesh filter. And then what we'll do is we will have it just move the material. It'll create a material clone for a moment while it's on screen. So target mesh filter dot material. No, sorry, target. It's a mesh renderer. Mesh renderer. Target mesh renderer. Alpha channel, of course. For this sort of thing, I'm not sure that additive blending would work out. Material. So we want to do material m equals target mesh renderer material. Sorry, there's supposed to be an equal sign in there. We'll do material dot offset main texture offset plus equals vector3 dot right times time dot delta time. Duration minus equals time dot delta time. Duration if duration is less than or equal to 0, destroy game object. This is super basic stuff that we're doing here. Yeah, sorry about that. So what this should do is quickly kill itself off. Oh, I forgot to set the mesh render. Boom. So what we're going to do is see how that works. When I'm using a material that is made of one non-zoomed in texture, that'll work really much better. But for now, even that'll work. We're not going to want to set this equal to duration of 1, though. We're going to want to set it equal to a duration of like 0.2. And then here what we're going to do is we're going to divide this by duration. That way it'll always go by 1. And that should work. So the next thing we need to do is tell the camera to stick this thing into the scene whenever it switches views. So we'll call this the camera cut hider. I would call it a mask, but mask means something specific. So drop this into the prefabs list. And then we're going to go up to our camera, our cinematic camera. There it is. And we're going to add in a slot for that specific thing. So public static game, not static, just public game object cut hiding prefab. So now when we choose the shot, what we're going to do, we're actually going to need to pull this off a few moments before we choose the shot. So for that, what we're going to need to do is add in a protected game object active cut prefab. Let's put in a comment here so that we won't forget later on. Tooltip, something to cut in front of the camera and hide transitions. Let's see, I don't think I'm missing anything right now. Yeah, that should be fine. So what we need to do is here in manual update, you can see that we have this if duration is less than or equal to 0, blah, blah, blah. We're also going to do an if duration is less than or equal to 0.1f and cut prefab, active cut prefab equals null. Then active cut prefab equals game object dot instantiate prefab cut hiding prefab. It shouldn't be called prefab anymore. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and change the name of this. It shouldn't be called active cut prefab. It should be called active cut game object. cut hider. Because prefab means that it's not in the actual system yet, so not in the actual scene yet, so obviously that's dumb. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate this on top of the main camera. Problem is that it's not the main camera we need to be cutting in front of. We need to cut in front of everything, but it's a ship camera. So we're going to go ahead and do camera on a stick .shipcam .transform and false, true, false. There we are. What we're also going to want to do is set the active cut hider. Actually, that should be all we need to do. So what we're going to want to do, though, is tweak the actual active cut hider prefab so that it appears in the right spot. So if we take a look at these prefabs, here's our active cut hider. And you can see that this appears in some weird spots. What we would like to do is have it appear at 002. That should allow it to appear in front of the camera. That said, we still have to assign it. If we don't plug it in, it'll never happen. There we are. So let's see whether this works. It did not work. The question is whether or not the active cut hider was not created, or okay, so there's something screwy going on here. And it's not just that particular camera zoom. So let's put in a bit of information here. Debug.log hiding cut with a wipe. Good news is there doesn't appear to be any fatal problems moving to 5.6, not yet at least. Hiding cut with a wipe. Oh, there it is, camera cut hider. See it right there? So where is this relative to the ship cam? If we take a look at the ship cam, I gotta turn the gizmos back up. No? Where is the ship cam? There we are. There's the problem. All right, you can see that the ship cam is actually so close that we can't see the camera cut hider very well. Oh, it's not in the right... It's not the right field. Layer. So what we're going to do is change the layer over into the ship layer. And also make this a 3. Pink hair, I think you can drop those into this chat window, but I mean, you have my email, so you could always just email it to me. Clicking around and messing stuff up. There we are. Alright, so what we're going to do is see whether we can get this wipe to actually happen. Okay, so there was like a flicker there. Did you see that? That was the wipe in action. Obviously, that's going to not work until we have a wipe that looks right. That flickering is the fact that this is a barred material. So obviously that's not going to work. And also, that cut has got to stop. That is the worst thing here. That's the long nose shot. All right, so let's go ahead and fix the long nose shot, because that's awful. The long nose shot. Initial range 1200, initial angle 180, range delta negative 110, angle delta. Let's go ahead and try and get this to go past the ship rather than get stuck up it. And Pink Hair has sent me a file, which looks right. Open image and gradient. Can I just drag it in? I can't just drag it in, can I? Oh, maybe I can. Let's try dragging it in. What was it called? There it is. Yay! Let's see whether or not this works. If we drop that onto the prefab, we might be able to get it to look right. Question is whether or not Dropbox preserves transparency. I know that this doesn't. So, in terms of how it looks. If we take a look here, we've got this. Texture. I'm going to change the name. I think CP is aimed at me, but obviously this isn't mine. It is Pink Hair's. It's a very simple gradient, so I don't think there's going to be much concern over who is right to use it, who has the rights to use it, but it's better to keep it named properly either way. All right. So, does that look right? Oh, I'm still zoomed in. I think that this system thinks that it is just pure white. That doesn't seem to have changed anything. Interesting. I wonder why Dropbox didn't give it to me as an actual image. That's unusual. I mean, giving it as an image, it didn't just, it hid the transparency. You know what? Thank you, Pink Hair. I will come back to that later. I mean, I could try to come up with it now, but it requires me to do some annoying stuff. Sorry, my computer is really a mess right now due to the fact that I am in the middle of trying to move. So we're going to live with this slightly awkward one until I come back with it a little bit later. I'll have to plug in some crap later on to get these two computers to work well together. But you can see how that's going to work. Right now it just cuts to black, and obviously that's not going to be how it works in the long run. So that is the long nose shot still getting stuck. What's up with that long nose shot getting stuck? Let's make this -60, and that should really help. Yep, I think you're right, Pink Hair. I think that Chrome decided to kill the alpha channel when I dragged it. Don't worry about it. I'll deal with it later. The basic idea has been shown to work just fine. Soon as it has a material that has some transparency, it'll work fine. So the other thing we need to do is change this so that it has pop-ups over the characters rather than on the side. That's something we used to have. In fact, we may still have all the prefabs for it. Let's take a look. I think I probably deleted them. Elboetchi says, hey, Craig. Yeah, pink hair. Chrome is one of my worst. I hate it, but I only use Chrome for my Google logged in stuff and Twitch. Everything else happens over in a very restricted Firefox, which is why this is such a mess. But that's fine. Chrome has a really bizarre, hyper-aggressive caching policy, which makes it extremely difficult to roll out changes to web pages, which is the big reason I can't stand it. So, what was I trying to pull off here? We were going to change out the chat boxes for actual, like, pop-up chat boxes. Only problem is that we don't have anything like that at the moment. I must have deleted them back when I was making this new kind of chat box. So we'll have to create them fresh. It's not a big deal. There are two basic options. One is that each can have its own canvas, and the other is that they can be on a shared canvas. Okay, that's not where I want the canvas, but thank you. There we are. So I think the best option for us is that we want them to have individual canvases that get stapled to the characters. The reason for that is because they move in slightly odd ways depending on whether they're on screen or how far away they are. Pink Air says if they're in 3D, how would you use a shared canvas? Well, you can. It's actually not that difficult, but they're not going to be in 3D. They're going to be in screen space. Otherwise, their talking would like tilt awkwardly, and I would have to make sure that it tilted relative to a point that like is at the tip of the talk box or something. And that's a little bit more difficult than just setting them up as UI elements. So we're going to leave them as UI elements. Yeah, Chrome is really not very good, Elboetchi. It has been going downhill for years. I don't know why. Google is the richest company on the planet, but Chrome's still not great. So here is our new chat container. The old chat container is going to go away, but we have to finish building this one first. So we'll go ahead and put in a panel, and this will be our chat panel. That's not how you spell panel. Elboetchi asks if every browser is going downhill. Pretty much. We're in an era where the internet itself is going downhill at a structural level. And that's pretty clear if you look at any given setup. It's all of the pieces of technology that help to run the internet are struggling. And all the providers are being assholes. Yeah, Firefox is much better at tabs, especially since it only loads the tabs when you click over to them or when you first create them. So if you have 8 million tabs, then when you close Firefox and reopen it, it only loads the one tab that you're on, which is brilliant. But it has a couple of weaknesses. It doesn't allow you to do to reopen tabs from multiple windows and stuff like that, which is a shame. Yeah. The only reason I use Firefox is because of the plugins. Yeah. Pink Hair says that Google is ruining the internet, and I would say that is 100% true. I don't even think that anyone would contest that, anyone who knows anything about the internet, because Google really is screwing up the internet. They're too rich and greedy. So we're going to want to add in a content size fitter here, and then we're going to want to add in some content. For our content, we are going to want to make this into a vertical layout group. I actually don't know which of those we're going to click. We'll have to check in a second here. Are they actually trying to kill their plugin system, Elboetchy? Because that would just be phenomenally dumb. Like, really dumb. Unimaginably dumb. Layout element. Preferred height. 40. And then this will be the character's, boop, there we are. This will be the character's face and name. Yeah, I guess we are going to need a face and name here, aren't we? Yeah, trying to figure out the best way to handle this. The reason that I want them to have their face and name here is simply because that way you'll be able to see who's talking even if they're off screen or very small. That's going to be a raw image. Because we are using a texture, so that's fine. Just go ahead and attach it on the left there. 5, 36, 36, 0. That ought to do. Right now there is a lot of conversation about the way Firefox is going, and I have to say it sounds dumb. I think that right now the desperation is pretty palpable from Google and friends. The core problem is that they depend on ad revenue, and the biggest plugin for Firefox and probably for Chrome is ad blocker, because people aren't dumb. Ads are awful and they're getting worse, so obviously people are going to block as much ads as possible. And they're not even on the phone, people are using ad blockers. So instead of trying to figure out a way to work in this paradigm of not being awful to people, they've decided to double down on the concept of forcing people to watch crap that nobody will ever actually benefit from. They recently said they were going to release a study based on your buying habits offline to tell whether online ads were working. I can tell them already they'll find that the online ads do not work. They're still griping about Firefox. It's funny that, you know, Firefox is something that we gripe about. While saying that it's the best thing around, we also talk about how it sucks, which is perfectly acceptable. It's just kind of funny. So what we've got here is a face and name bar. I'm not 100% sure we're going to need it, but there's no reason not to have it. So we're also going to need to have a chat box. Now this is where we can just reuse the existing features. In fact, we can just reuse this entirely. What the heck am I talking about? I'm an idiot. We already have all the things we need for the chat boxes. It's just that they're popping up in that sidebar. And we want them to pop up in this new chat container that moves around instead. Alright, so I just wasted a ton of our time. So let's go ahead and look into how it works. I'm looking forward to the Chrome split where I can get something probably, or the Firefox split where I can get something called Firefox 56 forever. We shall see. Okay, so this is where we are right now. It's not the portrait HUD. Why are you calling it that? It is... the portrait HUD is down there. Why is this clicking on the portrait HUD? There's nothing anywhere near this for the portrait HUD. It is the crew talk box. So this crew talk box is the exact same as what we're going for, except for we want our crew talk box to be individual rather than just on the side screen there. So if we take a look at the crew talk box information and how it works, we've got this chat controller. This chat controller handles all of the calls to say something by spawning in chat blocks. Chat blocks are the pop-ups that show up in here. And what we would like them to be is we would like them to migrate over into the world space visually instead of stacking up here. So in order to deal with that, we can take this chat sidebar and we can take out the scroll rect and the mask. And that should allow us to have chat pop-ups that that work. So if we take a look, our chat blocks here, these are the things that we're going to bring into the world. Sorry if I'm moving slow here. I'm getting back into the UI stuff, and wow, it is a brain squeeze to completely different brain space. So what we've got here is a portrait cam, but we don't keep track of... There's the chatterer. So this chatterer is the feet of the character. What we're going to want to do is in update. This nonsense here isn't necessary anymore. Even if they didn't fix the bug, it's not necessary because the bug was one tier further up. So since we are no longer working with a content size fitter that contains us, we don't have to worry about that. We're happy the way we are, I think. We'll just comment that out in case I'm wrong. But what we're going to want to do is here in update, we're going to want to move ourselves over the character. Move to character's face. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and say transform.position equals, actually it's, transform is a 3D transform, and I don't know how that translates. We'll try it anyway. Transform.position equals, and then we're going to get the character's position, so chatterer.avatar.face. Is it .face? It might be. Well, we'll know for sure pretty quick here. Eye center. That's a vector 3. That's fine too. We'll go ahead and do it like that. So that should suck us into the character's visuals right away. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. We got a couple of days to wait first. I'm still trying to get my brain in gear here. So we've got this chatterer engaged, but you can see that nobody's saying anything. All of the chat boxes have popped up down here, which implies that the vector 2 and the transform 2D and the rect transform is not comparent. So rect transform. If rect transform equals null, rect transform equals get component rect transform. Rect transform dot position People are talking about their tab habits. Lots of them keep open ridiculous numbers of tabs. I do that when I'm researching, but it always feels good to close all those tabs when I'm done. Boom. However, you can see they're still in the wrong spot, and the reason for that is because we have to translate this into the visual. So camera dot sorry, it's universe on a stick. No, camera on a stick. Dot interior camera. I don't think we have a separate character camera. Camera on a stick dot interior cam dot world to screen point. There we go. I can't imagine using Chrome on mobile. I use several other browsers, but I really don't like the idea of using a Google product on a Google product with a Google product that Google product. That's too many Googles stacked up on top of each other. I've already got Google quarantined off to just Chrome on my desktop. I don't need it anywhere closer. Alright, so here you can see that they are in fact at the right spot. All the various characters are saying things in ways that make sense. However, the problem is that those characters are the mounting spot is ridiculous. If we take a look, you can see how it is mounted at the top here, which is not the right spot. So what we're going to need to do is spawn in that chat block and change it. So here is the chat box, which I think is the block, yeah. So we're going to go ahead and drop that into our content here and change the mounting so that instead of being mounted on the top, it's mounted on the bottom and -0.2, -0.1, and -0.1. Yeah, that's probably okay. -0.2. That should do. Just apply it and delete it. Peter Norlich says, wow, what's that universe camera on a stick supposed to be? Yeah, Pink Hair says it's basically a selfie stick rig. So the problem, Peter, is that I have to show the planet and the ship in the same frame at the same time. And you're not going to have a planet that's to scale. So that would be ridiculous, trying to get the planet to be the same scale as the ship, because that means that you'd have a planet that literally runs out of float values. So instead what I have is a really, really tiny planet and a really, really small ship. You can see that down here if I zoom in. This is the scale of the planet and the ship. You see that? So here's the ship, here's the planet. You can see the ship is actually larger than the planet. So the selfie camera, the camera on a stick has cameras at different distances from a central rotating point so that I can have a different set of visuals at different scales. So the planetary camera is at the center, and then the ship camera is at the edge, and that means that as I zoom around, I get a reasonable set of values that makes it look like the planet is quite large, as you can see. And it looks like everybody busted stuff. Look at all this people breaking shit. All right. If we expand here, we can get their faces. But we're not zooming in on them. That's kind of interesting. And I think I remembered we had a reason we weren't zooming in on them before. There was something, I figured out why the bug existed, but unfortunately, I can't remember what it was because it's been a week. Should have written it down. Oh, that's right. It was because I'd moved the camera, and therefore it counted as no longer automatically panning. So when I click on a character to zoom in, I need it to automatically pan, go back to automatic panning. So down here in the camera control, we've got our cinematic cam and the scenario cam. The scenario cam is the one that's a little bit iffy. So this should be the one that sets up the zoom target and then zooms towards it, right? Screwed that up. So there should be something involved here with it not... I thought I had one. Is that not the camera I'm using? Well, let's go ahead and get there and check the camera. 10Chaos1 says you're still prototyping. Okay, let's go ahead and figure that out. Oh, yes, you're right. You mean on the streaming box. Good call. Let me go ahead and fix that. Properties. Now developing the galactic line. Boom. All right. So we're getting on into day 14. Usually we got about 30 days until an event happens. We can talk about the specifics of this timing later, and I could set it to debug timing, but I'd rather be more comfortable with what we're going on here. So right now we've got some cameras happening. If we take a look at a camera, you can see that it actually tells us what the camera stack is. The scenario has the camera on it, so we're going to go and pop on over to the scenario and take a look at their camera. The scenario's camera is a scenario cam, which is correct. Okay, so that is the scenario cam after all. If I were to click on one of these characters, you can see that we do not zoom, like at all. Which is odd. We should be zooming. I'm just not sure why we're not. So you can see that these values for the target are changing. Target head orientation. That is meaning that it's got a head orientation as its target, but for some reason it's not actually zooming in on the target. So why is that? Let's take a look here. So here's the ship arm righting itself. That's a selfie stick getting wedged back at 0, which is fine. Which has got an offset t-dot position. That's fine. Yes. Okay. So hold on. Here it is. If the offset is greater than 0, then set our zoom target to null. Otherwise, if we have a zoom target, do something here. If the offset is greater than 0, so offset.magnitude is probably getting set by someone or something. So what we're going to want to do is clear that offset whenever we set a target. So offset equals vector 3.0, or t.right, t.up times vert, and t.forward times zoom. Okay, so hold on. This is us moving the thing around. And what is T? T is our camera on a stick position. So that means that if our camera on a stick isn't at 0, 0, 0, it doesn't work. This is odd. Okay, so this only happens... Ah, there it is. I see. This only happens when we are pressing buttons. Offset is going to be equal to 0 if we're not pressing buttons. So let's go ahead and put in some tests here. Debug.log zooming else debug.log freecam. Let's give this a shot and see whether or not this is going to give us more information about what's happening here. Also, while we're waiting for that to happen, we can put in values here. If the player is moving the cam, don't zoom automatically. To tell you the truth, this camera setup is wrong because we are not taking the position of the planet into effect. So there we had a good zoom, and you can see that we're continuing to zoom. If we click on Sock Spice, we should zoom. It says that we're zooming. Now it says that we're free cam. Alright, so it looks like there is a problem here where it decides that the player, once the player does something, it no longer does anything. It goes into free cam. So the zoom target is equal to null. Okay, so we're doing this wrong. We're being stupid here. Okay, sorry, we are going into code that I've forgotten about, and we got to fix it up. So public bool, player has manual control equals false. If offset magnitude is greater than 0, player has manual control equals true. And do not clear the zoom target. If zoom target yeah, we'll do if not player has manual control. If zoom target, zoom in. Otherwise, camera with no cause. Otherwise, we're just gonna wait, so player control acknowledged. Player camera control. Here on zoom on transform, we're going to go ahead and say player has manual control equals false. But we're going to change this value. I don't like the way that it's called player has manual control. We're going to call it player took control. Player manually changed view. I guess it doesn't really matter. So let's see whether that helps a little bit. So we've got an on destroy for the scenario camera, which apparently hides the default. Override on destroy. Okay, so what is the default on destroy for the camera control schema? Here it is. So we're going to go ahead and make this a virtual. And over here in the scenario camera, we are going to override it. What was it? Virtual public? Don't know why it's public, but whatever. And we'll make sure to call the base. So base.onDestroy. Just getting my head back into the game is proving to be a challenge. Maybe I need more caffeine. Boom. Looks like we got some movie watchers. Oh, nope. Hoorah! So here we've got characters talking about stuff. Boom. So if we click on them, they should zoom in, but they are not. Come on, go down to the bottom. Player camera control acknowledged. Player camera control acknowledged. Player camera control acknowledged. Why is it saying player camera control acknowledged? When we tell it to zoom in on something, it should zoom, right? So here, player manually changed view equals false. Target changed. Maybe I am misunderstanding how that target actually works. Try it one more time. By the way, there are a lot of things that I do want to talk about here, although it's an hour in, so anyone that's going to be listening for my talk about design has already stopped watching. But the physics stuff I came up with, I'm testing it on voxels right now, but there's no reason that it has to be voxels. I could very easily make it using components. Why are you still in that case, it would be very similar to this game visually, but it would be more about driving around. But why are we not zooming in properly? Apparently, it's because we are an idiot. We never say this zooming on here. And the reason for that is because we never call it. Instead, what we're doing is we're directly calling the target update. So we got a target that's different from a zoom target. So what we need to do is the scenario camera isn't responding properly because we are not telling it what the zoom target is. We're only telling it what the target is. The reason that we might have a different target and zoom target is because we might be zooming in on someone's face after we having specified someone's after specifying that we want to look at someone, we want to zoom in on their face instead of their core root positioning. But that is obviously not what we're doing. So what we've got here is target changed and zoom on transform, neither of which is actually getting called. So let's just see whether these are referenced anywhere. They might be referenced in events, but the only place that they're referenced here is in scenario, when we tell them to do something in response to this zoom command. I don't know if this zoom command is actually called properly. It should be called whenever we click on someone, but I'm not at all sure that's the case. Here's the scenario telling us to zoom, and here's the scenario telling us to zoom. This is the one in question. So we figure out what's going on, and we zoom to the character if we want to. And then down here, we zoom to the character. But what we don't do is detect when the character has been clicked on. Here, universe.view target.avatar. So what we're going to want to do is actually tell it to zoom there as well. So zoom target.avatar.transform. We may actually want to make that target.avatar.face.transform. Let's try that. All right. Woohoo! All right, so as I was saying, the physics thing is interesting because it produces a kind of physics play that hasn't been seen very much in games, and combined with some fun UI improvements that I've made, it should allow for some fun stuff. And I know that people would enjoy playing it, whereas this is a weirder experience. So I'm seriously considering focusing on that rather than this. The only question is whether I can get the voxels to work out. That's still theoretical, so there is some work left to do on trying to figure out whether that can work. Why is the player control acknowledged? Because I think that the voxels do have a lot of freedom, and you can create a lot of fun ships using voxel stuff. It's also freeing outside of ships, like you can create cars and buildings and stuff. but I do need to make sure that the voxels get chunked up in a way that is fairly convincing, which requires having a voxel chunking algorithm that has been tested, and I haven't finished testing any, so I've got some work to do there. The idea of combining these kinds of assets with voxels is a little bit rough. So if I was going to do that, it would have to be something more like Space Engineers style components rather than this. But there is also some merit to going with strictly a component-based solution like this one. The components are prettier. They just are a little bit more limited as to how you can use them. Pinker says, huh, is a skybox broken? There's some weird stuff with the skybox. I haven't looked into it because it's not high on my list of priorities. It's a really old skybox. I think it's from you, actually. Pinker says, that reminds me, how's the voxel thing going? I was having surgery at the time. Well, the voxel thing was also having surgery. I can show it to you. Give me a moment to figure this out, and then I'll show it to you. But I just don't know what's going on here with this thing not properly selecting what's going on. We should be selecting it because we're telling it to zoom whenever we click. Oh, maybe it's here instead. No, that's not it. So this zoom should actually tell the camera, here it is, to zoom in. Is the camera schema not set properly? Is that what the problem is? Let's find out. Pinker says you could always have the voxels limited to freeform component. I think that voxels do their job best when they are hull elements, just because that gives you the most freedom to design ships that are shaped the way you want them to be shaped. But I'm not sure how well that works when you're trying to connect them up to arbitrarily scaled and shaped objects. I'll have to think about it. So what we've done here is we've clicked and there is 0 information about what's going on here. And the chat box live say is busted too, as you can see. There's something dumb going on here, and I don't know what it is. When I click on a character, oh, because it's not the scenario, you frigging idiot. So I've got to actually put this into, yeah, thank you. Control F, and then randomly type into the screen. There we are. So this zoom should really go into the universe.view. And you can see that what happens is we got this avatar editor set up, and then we set up the avatar. But what we don't do here is tell the main camera to do something. So if there's an attached camera, that's fine, but here is where we have our situation. This is where we set the target, as you can see. What we're going to want to do is test whether or not that's a scenario camera. And then use it if it is. So camera control schema dot stack 0 as scenario cam. If cam, then cam dot zoom on transform target dot face. All right. So Pinker says that crazy Uvula Nebula, she won't shut up. I don't know what that. Oh yeah, yeah, the character. Oh, it has to be a transform, of course. Thank you. So basically, the physics works really, really well for components, but breaking it into voxels is a little bit more difficult, just because nobody's ever done it before. So I'm struggling to figure out the most fundamental ways for a person to be able to visualize where the voxel seams are in the physics simulation. But the good news is I can actually program in the voxels to have like visual seams where there are seams in the simulation. Meaning that if you were putting down like a hull, you'd see these hull plates, which would be like something like 5 by 5 or something similar. And if you were going to see any sort of damage, physics damage along those plates, you would see it at those ridges because that's where the physics system does all of its work. The thing is that if I'm doing that, there's not a whole lot of reason to make them like voxels, because that could just be an object, a whole object that you can just change the scale of. Voxels, the advantage of using voxels is the dramatic amount of freedom it affords when you're defining your shapes. But I'm just not sure that I can figure out what's going on there. I'll have to try and do a little bit more research. So, okay, so there's something dumb happening here. So, as you can see, it says on enable avatar viewing canvas, setting up editor, main camera change to head orientation, master camera change to head orientation, stress event break. Oh, because the camera on top isn't camera 0, it's camera stack.count. And pink hair apparently had mouth or throat surgery, which doesn't sound too terribly fun. So when I'm thinking about voxels, I'm considering if you had a ship set that looked like this, how would you use voxels to make your hull interesting and unique? It's a tough thing to think about because these sorts of objects... Finally! Jesus, that was way harder than it should have been. But at least it works now. I mean, voxels for ships that look like this, how would they actually fit into the visual? Games that use voxels tend to have very voxely components, and I could do that. It would be basically space engineers with physics. But there is a lot to be said for having these kinds of wonderful non-blocky elements, and I just don't know how physics would work, or how voxels would work to make these look good. Because, I mean, just imagine boxes just randomly stuck onto these. It just would not look right. Even with smoothing, it would be pretty awful. So I'm still considering the whole voxel situation. The physics seems compelling, so I think that that's going to be a major... that's something I have to build games around, because that's something I've never seen, and it's super cool. But it's also cool because it's not just stress. I can calculate things like heat and airflow and pressure and anything else that needs to propagate through a complex object. And it's much, much cheaper than doing it via actual simulations, which means that I can do a lot of stuff super, super fast and super, super easy. Including things like growing plants, because I can keep the graph as the plant is in the final form, and then as it's exposed to various kinds of growing conditions, it can have that propagate out and it'll bloom. And you can change the growing conditions to change how it grows very, very fast and on the fly, which seems like it would be a lot of fun. Pink Air says you could use voxels to build up and then run some sort of pass to convert them to shapes. That's not a bad idea. I'll have to think about it. But anyhow, this is how it looks right now. I've got dirt, wood, and stone, right? So, for example, if I was going to build a stone hut, right now I have some test physics built into this thing, and I don't want to bonk this hut, because it will actually end up making the whole thing shake and flip over, just because of the way that it's not actually anchored to the ground, so it's bumpable. And I'll have to deal with that. So what I'm doing is I'm doing the classic, you know, build yourself a hut. This is the same sort of hut you might see in Minecraft or anywhere else, right? And now let's go ahead and put some dirt just outside here for some reason, just for kicks, right? Just to show you the difference between dirt and everybody else. That's the edge of the voxel there. Now when I pause it, we can see all of the physics chunking happening here. So here you can see these walls are a single physics object, and that red cross means that they're an anchoring object. They're attached to the ground. Whereas with the wood, you can see that it's been split into 4 different chunks, and these chunks are nonsense. While it's true that you would want to split it into chunks, splitting these chunks, you know, so there's these 2 and then some other stuff over here, doesn't make any sense. So I'm looking for chunking algorithms that make more sense than that. Of course, in this case, the good news is that they are treated as a single physics object in the end, just because of how they're connected up. But that's just random luck. They shouldn't be like that. Down here, you can see that the dirt has very poor cohesion, so the chunks are quite small. Each dirt chunk is its own physics object. But the way that they're connected up via the physics simulation is much simpler than that. So this is only counting as 3 objects for the physics simulation, which is much, much better than the 15 or 16 objects it normally would be. So if we were to go back into the game world and add in some more dirt, like here, for example, we'll start to see some damage start to happen as the system tries to figure out what it's doing, because dirt isn't very strong. I don't have the physics finished yet for the purposes of collapsing these. I just don't have the concept of creating a new physics object. It understands that that is a new physics object. It just doesn't understand what to do about it yet. But you can see how it kind of is trying to figure out what's going on there. But because the chunks are a little bit nonsensical, it's a little hard to do it right. Now if I were to take stone and start to stack it off this way, you can see that we get stress points. Once again, we don't have any physics system for having that chunk fall, but that means that those 5 stone blocks were 1 chunk, and the physics simulation was overstressed on that 1 chunk. I would need to tell the player that that was a physics chunk, rather than him thinking that it was just a block, a set of blocks, because they need to understand that it's being chunked into physics objects. Pink Hair says neat. I'm not sure what he was talking about, but hopefully he wasn't talking about flipping the entire thing over. So here you can see that the dirt is falling out of the system here. There is something strange going on with this house. You can see that I just destroyed it. I'm not 100% sure what caused that, but it's clear that the damage to this side of the house is the real problem, and then the other side of the house realized that it was supporting the entire weight of the house, and things went to shit. See, the stone can't hold up this much weight because this is counting as weight on the stone. Anyhow, you can see why the difficulty here is having the player understand how these objects are chunking. And that means there's a question as to whether or not it even has to be voxels. Or I could even make it so the player chooses where these things chunk by how they put the voxels together. For example, one of the UI elements that I've never understood, if you've played Space Engineers, you're familiar with, if you've played, oh, so hold on, people are asking questions here. If you're attaching 2 physics objects together, are you quantizing the positions to fit the grid, or... It doesn't have a grid. The grid is unimportant for my physics simulation. The grid is only useful for voxel counts. So, no, I wouldn't. The only thing I would need to know is whether the voxels were intercepting with the bounding box of the physics object, because then they kind of is connected. But what was I saying? Shit, I've completely forgotten. Oh yeah, you've played Space Engineers. You know how it's got like 15 different hull blocks, and it's like hull block square, hull block with a tiny corner missing, hull block that's actually like a V shape, hull block that's just one tiny corner, hull block that has 1/3 1/3 ramp, hull block that has 2/3 ramp, hull block that's a corner of the 1/3 ramp, hull block that's the inverted corner of the 1/3 ramp, and all of these things, right? That's really dumb, and it makes no sense. And because I came up with a really much better way to let the player do that, I really want to make a voxel system just so that the player can feel like they are getting cool stuff done. But it needs to be a lot of cool stuff. It needs to feel fun. Anyway, the better way to handle that sort of thing is to make everything blocks originally, but then allow the player to have either a chisel or a patch system, and they can click on the corners just to, you know, knock those corners off, and it'll easily turn into all of those shapes. That's a really simple way to do it, and I don't know why nobody has. The only problem with that, of course, is if you're doing the same shape repeated over and over and over, and you don't want to sit there and chisel it a lot, you probably want to give them the option to have a block shape in their memory. Pink Air says, I suggest having some priority being put into the order they were laid down. That way there would be benefits to laying down the cross beams before a roof. That's actually, so let me go ahead and show you this. Pink Air says, I get the objects aren't fixed to the grid, but what if two objects which are at funny angles attached by drawing voxels between them? How does it deal with that? The stresses are entirely not voxel based. These voxels have nothing to do with the stress calculations. The only thing they do is they specify where physics objects might be created for the stress simulations. The stress simulation is not a voxel related stress simulation. From its point of view, voxels are just physics objects that happen to be on a grid. So, for example, if you're going to be building a roof, we might look at it like this. So, there, right? So this is our roof object. If we take a look at how this is simulated, this is how it works. So each of these is this is dirt. I built it on dirt because I'm an idiot. But each of these is one unit away, one hop away. So this is a root node. This is 1 hop, 2 hop, 3 hop, and 4 hop. You can actually see that here, 4 hops. There's a 3 hop, but it's inside this guy, so you can't really see it. So when we're talking about crossbeams, the crossbeams will automatically take the stress off the roof because of the way the physics simulation understands that the crossbeams are there, are taking the load like this. Similarly, if I decide that those are a bad idea, these dirt blocks, I can actually put in stone columns here like this and like this, and then cut the dirt blocks out like this. And then if I were to pause, you can see that now the stone blocks are handling the connection rather than the dirt blocks. And now this is only 2 hops away rather than 4, which does make the physics calculations a little bit easier. But you can see that this wooden beam has been chunked oddly. Because of the way the physics system sets it up, it doesn't really matter, but there is this crease here where these 3 bricks are 1 chunk and this 1 brick is another chunk. So that's the sort of thing that I need to figure out how to avoid in the future. But if we were we could do whatever we want to try and create more complicated systems and setups. In this case, we've got a problem where the dirt is not really built to... Oop, I forgot we had physics on. My bad. The dirt is not really built to hold things up, so this is very silly, and you can see that it's not working out. There we are. Come on. Come on, hurry. Oh no, it's all collapsed. If this was in the mode where it would be able to create new physics objects, then that would have literally just come apart and crashed to the ground. But we are not, that's not done yet. We haven't gotten that far. Pink Air says, this is fascinating. I don't know if you saw the video I made about it that explains how it works on a spaceship, but it works the same way with voxels if you can convince the voxels to be spaceship parts. Which is basically the challenge I'm facing right now. Also, right now, it doesn't understand what's going on in terms of things like gravity. So when you edit it upside down like this, it still thinks that the root objects are here at the base. Which is obviously not quite right. It thinks that this is attached to the ground. Anyway, these wooden beams are supposed to be vertical beams, which is why they're so bad at spanning over distances, and why they're breaking right now with the force of a giant stone block on them. Needs a lot of work. A lot of work is needed. No, that's stone. Let's put in wood. Previously, I would walk up on top of this, but right now it bumps if I try. So I've got to be careful. Let's just make it that tall. And now I can put some stone across the top. And you might be thinking, you know, you can just want to put the stone across the top classic Minecraft style. But you will suffer from stress while you are unfolding that, so it might be better to build up scaffolds. It's a lot of fun to work with, but it just doesn't communicate very well with the player as to what is going on with the chunking. So that's what I have to work on. I have to get the chunking to work better and have it communicate better with the player, and that's going to require voxels that aren't just squares. So I might as well put in the full voxel setup for editing the voxels, knocking down the corners and stuff like that, which is what I'll be doing tomorrow. It's going to take me all day tomorrow, I'm sure. Oh, I forgot. Oh, no. The player collides with the physics object rather than it collides with the convex rather than the concave object. Something else I need to work out. Let's write this thing. Bring it back up. Let's take a look here. Physics object. 0. 0. Where'd it go? Oh, I broke it! Oh no! Get back up here, you jerk. Bonk. Perfect. As you can see, these wooden blocks are quite strong within their chosen domain, which is vertical beams. They can support quite a bit of brick. But not that much weight. Oh! Putting a giant mud thing on top ended up working out poorly. Yeah, one of the things that is interesting is that if I were to take this straight to space game, a lot of the complexities would vanish. But I really like the idea of building giant buildings, medieval buildings. The space game would be nice just because the physics simulation has no concept of ground. And, of course, these objects would be stapled onto a ship, so they wouldn't really be shifting like this. But I kind of want to have everything. Pink Air says, you can support a lot of straight up and down. The real strain is if it's off balance. You are correct. And that's already part of the simulation. So if I were to put this guy up, let's go ahead and turn off the rigid body so that we don't have to worry about it tipping over. And then I'll show you what happens when you build out to the side. Doop, 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 doop. So what we've got here is a physics simulation that is off to the side. If we take a look, that yellow bar is where the center of mass is that the pillar is supporting. So that shearing strength is pretty substantial. It is shearing pretty badly. But it turns out that the stone is worse at handling shearing than the pole, because the stone is just a whole bunch of random bricks, whereas the pole is built specifically out of a beam. You can't see that, of course. But shearing is definitely something that happens, and it's built into the calculations. I can also adjust the gravity and stuff like that if I need to. Pop. And of course, if I add this in as wood, we have a slightly different situation, because now it's this entire vertical bar. It also takes into account how much, how many connective voxels you have. So while we were snapping with that stone before, if we had several pieces of stone, we might be better off. That's wood. That's stone. So you can see that that is still turning red awfully fast. So I guess that's not enough stone to deal with it. But the basic idea is by changing how it's actually built, you can get realistic responses. Needs a lot of tweaking before it's ready, though. Pigcare says then we can build physics trebuchets and water screws in space. So here's the thing. Physics is definitely the most interesting thing for a construction game to allow. Even if you're playing Dwarf Fortress, the most fun I have with Dwarf Fortress was creating pressurized cannons out of room chambers and stuff. So it's not just the physics, it's also not just the stresses of gravity, it's also things like heat and air pressure. I want all of that stuff to be things that you can build, not stuff that you have to resist necessarily, but stuff that you can use to do cool things with. And that is really the core part of what makes these games fun to me, is you're building something that takes advantage of something that might be a constraint in anyone else's hands. And in your hands, it's not a constraint, it's a tool. And that seems like it would be a lot of fun. The thing with the physics, the simple stresses, is that the simple stresses are really interesting to have as things like rotors and pistons and stuff. In Space Engineers, those create these massively weird physics loads that end up breaking the system, and they basically just desperately try to make it not break the system, and that never really works out. So even today, rotors and pistons and stuff are basically just hacks. But if you do it like this, those connectors just are simulated as a standard part of the algorithm that takes 0 time to simulate. So aside from the movement of the colliding box, you know, the collision mesh or whatever, there's really no difficulty to moving those joints around. So you could build something that snaps its joints around real fast, and you would know exactly how much stress is happening at 60 frames a second, without any slowdown or any need to go through physics calculations in real time. I could even do it predictively and show you how it would work if it was stressed out. So you could be like, yeah, bring those around real fast. And as long as your system is built to withstand those stresses, you could do that. Rather than in Space Engineers, where it's like, you can't go faster than like 3 revolutions a minute, because then our physics system craps out, because it's the default physics chained system. So I'm really, this is why I'm so interested in this, because it's so rapid response. For example, if you're driving a car, a dune buggy across the dunes, it can instantly simulate the pressures upon your vehicle from the cars touching the ground in real time. So as you, for example, go off a jump and then your right wheel hits the ground first, it can simulate that really fast with zero loss in speed, and immediately understand the pressures of the rest of the vehicle upon the hydraulics of that wheel, and you might find that your wheel pops off or not. So that's why I'm so excited about it, because it has a lot of these potentials. Yep, that is a serious problem indeed with Unity Physics Pinkhair, and that's why I'm so excited about this option. It allows me to do things that no other space game or construction game has done, and that is physics-based movement at high speeds. And that's just the stress calculation. That's not even including things like heat calculation or airflow or any of that. So that's something I'm really looking forward to working with. But first, I've got to get this voxel system to work. Well, since it's open, I could work on it for a little while. What I need to do is change the way that the faces are rendered so that I can have them make more sense. And to do that, I just need to change what these faces look like, what these objects look like. This is difficult for me because one of the things that you do when you're optimizing this away, you remove the interior faces. But that only works if you have voxels that can convincingly say that they have an interior face. So for right now, I'm actually going to disable the interior face setup. All of this is going to have to be reprogrammed. It's definitely a test program, but it should offer some good advice. Yeah, so someone actually mentioned that in my physics. They were like, in Kerbal, every part has its rotational velocity and rotational stress is calculated out in real time. I'm like, yeah, you ever built a Kerbal system with more than 10 parts? Your frame rate drops. Whereas with this, your frame rate would not drop. And there's no reason to simulate out all of those complex physics in Unity, because Unity's physics engine is specifically built for impacts, one object bumping into another. When you're calculating out internal stresses, that is absolutely the last thing on your mind. Even if you do get hit by something, you don't want the whole vehicle to simulate its internal stresses as a bunch of interconnected hits. You want to know where you got hit and then propagate those stresses in the fastest way possible, fastest realistic way possible, which is the whole point of the way I'm doing it. So here is where I set up the faces, but the problem is that these faces are really, really just squares. And what I need them to be is maybe meshes. I think meshes might be the best option here. So what I can do is set up the material, the voxel material, to have a voxel mesh. But then when you chip off the edges, how does that work with the voxel mesh? I suppose I could just algorithmically chip off edges. Yeah, that's fine. I can deal. Public mesh, voxel mesh. So we're going to need to go ahead and create a new folder for our meshes. Yep, in fact, that's exactly what it's built for, billiard balls. So what we're going to do is just pop on over into here and go into the meshes, and we'll start up a new, that's search, there, new Blender file, go over here, save it in that location. Voxels. Perfect. Bring it back over. All right. So I think what we'll do is we will run from negative 0.5 to positive 0.5 for the voxel scales. That seems like it's probably best. So this, for example, is a very simple square voxel. Scale it down by half, and there we have an exact voxel fit. Excuse me, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. Now, for our wooden beam, we're going to want to use a circle with, say, 18 verts and a radius of 0.5. We'll tab in here, and we will extrude up. There we are. hide this. There we are. It's all backwards, so we'll invert this, flip direction, and then just cap it off at the sides here. To be honest, we should do a better job than that because we're going to be algorithmically adjusting these. And it's better if we don't algorithmically adjust them to not work. There you go. So that's going to be our pillar, which we're going to go ahead and choose these lines here and here, tell them to be sharp, and then smooth everything like this. Those sharpenings, doom, perfect. And lastly, we need to unwrap them, just to have it unwrapped. Pink Air says that I'll probably need to use an index of shapes like you use in marching cubes, only simpler since you'd not have gradations. I might have gradations. To be honest, I don't remember marching cubes very well. But right now, this is an easy way to do things, so I figured, what the heck, I'll do it this way for starters. If you are a master of marching cubes, I would definitely be interested in learning about it. But as I recall, marching cubes is copyrighted. Or patented or something dumb like that, and the guy actually goes after people. So, you know, what an ass, right? So if we go over here into the universe and we start dropping things off, we can just drop this cube. The stone can be a cube as well. The wood can be a cylinder. The patent expired. Ooh, nice. All right, well, then I'll have to read up on marching cubes. I don't want to focus on building these at the moment, though. I just want them to look good enough to communicate to the player what's going on. And what that requires of us is that when we build our voxels here, rather than creating the voxels out of faces like this, we are going to want to create them out of the mesh that is in our material. So voxel material m equals universe.material. Come on. Index, map that index. And what we're going to want to do is pull all of the elements out of that. We could do normal map and stuff as well, but for now we're just going to do UV and tries and verts. All right. m.voxelmesh.triangles. Vector 3. What's this called? Verts equals m.voxelmesh.verts. And vector 2 UV equals m.voxelmesh.uvs. We could put in normals, but they'll recalculate later, so whatever, we'll leave it. Pinker says the main benefit of marching cubes would be that you could theoretically replace the index of shape with more fancy meshes that still fit the criteria. I'm afraid I don't know enough about marching cubes anymore. It's been literally a decade since I last researched it. So I'm afraid I don't remember. So what we need to do is get a vert index equals verts.count. Oh, there's two things called verts. Call this L verts, L tries, and L UVs. And what we're going to do is we're going to say for each, or for int a equals 0, a is less than lverts.length. Count? No, dot length. Well, whatever, a++. There must be something wrong with this because it's no longer allowing me to... Oh, this isn't an array. There's this problem. Idiot. There we are. So now we're just going to say verts.add lverts a. And we will say UVs. Okay, we don't actually have a UVs. We got to build one. There we go. Verts.add, lverts a, colors.add, get color. Yeah, that should be fine. Colors.add color, UVs.add UV, and then we need to go through the tries. So for int a equals 0, a is less than tries.length. Oh, L tries. Tries.add, and then we need the actual value, which is L tries a plus vert index. Should work. Yeah, I don't see any other things we're going to need, but we are going to have to tell it that the UVs is here. So mesh.set UVs. UVs. Oh, I need to tell it a channel. All right, so that probably will work. It did not work. I accidentally added UVs instead of LUVs. Sorry. That was me being dumb. And loves doesn't exist because it's just love. Now the variable corner is assigned. Okay, so that's my bad. I forgot to actually offset the verts by the corner. There we are. Let's see whether this works. We bring it up to wood. Okay. So it's not in the right spot. And it's not oriented correctly, although the orientation is... So it needs to have its corner offset some more. It looks like it is... Clicking on this is going to be harder too. For now, I think that we can just subtract 1. Subtract half, rather. Let's find out. Ooh, it did not like that. Wow, that's funky. Okay, so that's more correct. That's also correct. There. All right. Seems like we are actually working again. And look, the physics simulation is still intact. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we put in some wood blocks. Boom. You can see that they're rotated the wrong way. And they also have a seam running down them, but that's okay. That's all stuff that we can deal with. It's temporary. For now, let's just go into the Blender file and rotate them. Pink Hair says he has to go, which is fine. I will see him maybe on Wednesday. All right, there we go. So now we can communicate the fact that the pillars are vertical pillars, which is important to understanding why they are how they are. But you can see that we have some problems where... whoop, that's upside down. That's not going to work. We have some problems where trying to get these stone blocks or anything else to visually represent what's going on, we need to be able to put seams into them. So that's something that needs to be done a lot more aggressively. Now, you can't see it very well down there because it's tilted and rotated. But those stones should be split into specific sizes. Let's try it again with dirt, just so we can see it real clear. Dirt. Here we see. These need to be visible. Now, what we can do is we can implement a corners system, which allows us to have two sets of corners. The corner set for structural editing and the corner set for physics editing. So what we would have is when we calculated out the corners, we would bend these corners down based on those two values. The outermost corner would bend down based on both, and the inner corner would bend down based on physics only. Or rather, the structural editing only, I mean. That would create a seam, but right now, of course, the block isn't complex enough to actually have enough verts to show that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sub-edit the block. Or subdivide, I mean, the block. This obviously radically increases the number of verts in any given element, but it's time that we can try to figure out... you know, it's 4:30, and I think I want to do this off-screen. I do have 15 viewers, which is an oddly high number. I don't think I've ever had that many before. They're being very quiet, though. Either that or I missed them in chat. If anybody wants me to continue just randomly programming this stuff on camera, let me know. I'm not going to be making steady progress. It's going to be pretty awkward because I'm testing stuff out and trying stuff. So we'll call this struct corners and physics corners. And we're going to want public void clear index int index. Map index equals 0. Damage index equals 0. Struct corners index equals 0. Physics corners index equals 0. And here we'll get these up to snuff here. Player Anonymous says, that's the most interesting part. Please go on. All right. I'll go on for as long as my voice holds up, which is not going to be too terribly long. Oh no! I screwed that up. Try that again. And this will be physics corners. 10Chaos1 also wants to see me screw up a lot. There we are. Now there are still some places where we clear these maps, so let's just take a look here. Map. No, damage. I know there are places where we do it, but it's probably not in Voxel Chunk, and instead it's in some other place. Ah, the player editor, of course. So here in the player editor, we set the object here. See this? So this is going to be clear. Sorry, it's going to be target.clearedIndex index. Now the reason that calculate mesh is separate from clear index is so that we don't have several recalculations if we need to change several voxel chunks at the same time. So struct and physics corners, these are things that are going to need to be implemented, but right now we don't have any capability for the player to change their tool. Right now, the player is always stuck on the tool where they can place blocks, place and delete blocks. We need to have separate sets of tools for the various things. Target.clearIndex doesn't exist. You mean this here? This doesn't exist right here? Is target... Yeah, so you just didn't bother to recompile? That's fine. So in order to create multiple tools, we need to give the player the ability to select the different tools. Right now, mouse wheel is used for selecting material. And it's a little bit too finicky for tool use in my mouse, but I think that's considered the normal. Should I switch mouse over, or should I switch the mouse wheel to being a tool select? Then how are you going to select different materials? 1 through whatever? Yeah, we'll make it so that 1 through whatever selects various... Well, I definitely want the tool to change with the mouse wheel. So whatever else we do, the tool changes with the mouse wheel. We'll go over into the player voxel editor. This thing is going to be, it has to understand what tools are active and change its functionality depending on that. The voxel editor is probably best as a tool rather than as the controller for all of the tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a tool that when turned on, this happens. For that to happen, we need to create another script that controls all of the tools as a list. But this here is going to change. We're just going to change this out to if input.getKeyDown keycode.minus keypad minus I think it's fine. We'll just make it hard-coded as minus and plus for the moment. Later on we'll want to change it, so to do, make this not hard-coded. And we need a new script, so we'll go ahead and do that right now. Create a player toolbox. And the player toolbox will be on an object right up here, this canvas. Here's an image, here's a panel. Where's this image? Oh, it's that little dot in the center of the screen, of course. So we need a new panel, which we'll put in the upper left corner. Something like this should work. And what we'll do is we will set this up to have a vertical layout group with a width sticker, like so, and a little bit of padding and spacing. No, that's too much spacing. And then we're going to add in a child content fitter. There we go. With a vertical fit that is preferred size, like so. Obviously, this is going to be called the toolbox. Player Anonymous says I could use mouse wheel plus Alt or Control. Yep, those are the sorts of things I have to figure out later on. For now, it's fine however it works. I just want to test out functionality. So inside of this toolbox, we're going to need to create a new panel with a size layout element, preferred height 30, maybe even more, 50. For some reason that's not taking, probably because there's nothing in this object. We'll go ahead and add in a text box. Okay, so why is this not working? Height 50. Do I not need this layout element anymore? I don't think I need this layout element. I think they changed that so that it'll just take the height. If so, that's nice. All right. So this text box is going to contain the name of the tool. So this will be place brick. And then the panel here will come down into this panel and be put here. There we go. And then this panel will have our player editor on it. So this thing here, we can copy component, and then over here we will say paste as new, right? But that, if we do that, then this will have, it will vanish if we're not currently on it. I guess that's fine. Let it vanish for now. Come on. Let me paste it. What the hell? There, Jesus. The 1 pixel where it actually lets you paste components. Do I have anything here that I need to keep in mind? Yeah, that should have taken. That's fine. Remove. There we go. And so what we would like to have this toolbox do is switch between direct children as it changes. So our player toolbox goes here. Come on, player toolbox goes here. The 1 pixel where you can drop stuff, yeah. So what we're going to want to do is in update float mouse wheel equals input.get component get axis mouse scroll wheel. If MW is less than 0, then prev. If MW is greater than 0, next. Public void prev. Public void next. And what we do is we look up which of our direct children is active, and we make the previous or next one active. So to do that, we just take a look at all of our transforms children, like this. So what we're looking for is just the active one. So we're going to go ahead and say, yeah. For int a equals 0, a is less than transform.child count, a plus plus. If transform a, if transform.getChild a dot enabled, no, it needs to be active. I guess it's gameObject.active. So if the transforms gameObject is active, then we want to disable it. And set the previous one up to be active. So if a is greater than 0, a minus 1, true, else transform.getChild transform.child count minus 1, true. And then, of course, either way, we break. Same thing down here, but with nexts instead of previous's. So if a is less than transform.child count, a plus 1, otherwise a is 0. So in order to make that test happen, we need to duplicate this panel and remove this voxel editor and turn it off. Yeah, see over there on the left? It's working fine. So to make this look different enough to make sense, we're going to go ahead and just change some of the values in here so that we can tell what's going on. Chisel. So here you can see us switching between place, brick, and chisel. It works fine. Of course, chisel doesn't actually exist yet, but we can make it exist. So let's go ahead and do just that. So we put this here, call this chisel, drop it in. Up here, we're going to go ahead and rename this to build. So the chisel doesn't have any code for it yet, but we can create some. So our player voxel editor and our chisel have a lot in common. The big thing they've got in common is this stuff here. Chisel voxel on left click, build voxel on right click. So you can see that it says target.transform blah 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 blah. Target is passed in here as part of this edit, so we're going to go ahead and just completely replicate this. Later on, we'll probably normalize it, abstract it away, but for now that's fine. This raycast is going to be something we need to do. I've got a moth in my room. It needs to die. Alright, so that should be fine. It's exactly the same. But what we need to do is set the corners differently. So in order to do that, we need to determine which corner we're on. For now, we're just going to assume that we're always on the same corner. So the corners byte field that I created is actually not somehow a list of corner damage. It's a flag field. So if you take a look at a box, a box has 8 corners, and a byte has 8 bits. So what we're going to see here is that each bit counts as one of the 8 corners. And that's true of both of the corner fields, both of the maps for the corners. They're just different categories of corner editing. But that means that rather than target map index equals material loaded, what we're going to do is say target.corners, physics corners, index equals anything that is a... later on we'll have to calculate this, figure out what the player has done. But right now we'll want to set it to 1. That will chisel off one of the corners, the first corner, whatever it happens to be. And then this down here equals 0, which will put all the corners back to being full. So 0 is all corners, and then each bit flag is 1 corner missing. 10chaos1 hates moths. I think that I actually have a moth infestation, but since I'm moving real soon, I can't give a shit. Alright, so that should set up the corners, but of course right now we're not actually determining the corners with any sort of visual. So we're not changing how things look when we build the corners, and we kind of want to. So we're going to go ahead and open up our voxel chunk and make those corners actually have a visual result. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to just press any vector or any point that is within that area into a slightly new formation. Other thing we got to do is add some more to this, like so. Perfect. So what we're going to do is here in the verts, we need to determine what corners exist and what corners are being pushed down. And that's going to resolve to which side of the mesh we are looking at. So vector 3 lvert equals lverts a. Press with corner. So we're going to take a look with the corners here. First, we need to determine which corner this is, if there is a corner. So if physics corners index, yeah. If physics corners index equals, it does not equal 0. Physics need to push the voxel. Then we're going to want to figure out whether the corner that the vertex is in is the one that we are pushing. So what we're going to need to do is determine the quadrant of this vert. And the way we can do that is, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do this, because really what we're doing is if x is less than 0, if y is less than 0, if x is greater than 0, which is annoying. But I think that's probably the best way to do it. So int corner equals 0 if lvert.x is greater than 0.5f, corner plus plus. If lvert.y is greater than 0.5f, corner plus equals, sorry, this is wrong, 2, corner plus equals 4. If lvert.z is greater than 0.05f, then corner plus equals 8, right? No, wait, because it's actually in... Okay, so this is a little more problematic than I left it to be, because the corner is in... it can't be called corner either. We've already got a value called corner. It's actually in any number of corners. That's the difficulty here. Because if we have knocked off the top 4 corners, then the mesh verts which are on the top are all missing. So what we need to do is figure out what weights it has. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a corner cage if I can figure out the best way to do this. The corner cage would be pressures away from given verts based on their cage values. So create a corner cage for adjusting the mesh. Vector 3 corner cage equals new vector 3 8. If physics corners index does not equal 0, then what we're going to want to do is set up that corner cage with values based on its position. No, this isn't a good way to do it either. What's the best way to do this? Damn. Maybe I should go through each of the corners and see whether it applies. So if we build the push, what we can do is we can say every point can be in up to 4 corners. So if lvert.x is, oh no wait, we want float x, yeah, float offset equals lvert.x. So int corner, int current corner equals 0. If this isn't good either. Damn it! I don't know the best way to do this, so I'm going to stop here and think about it for a while. Thanks for paying attention. I'll see you folks on Wednesday, I think. I'm going to be in the middle of moving, so if I miss this Wednesday, don't hold it against me. But we'll see you around. Have a nice one.